Today, we built a picture frame hanger to hang pictures on a sloping wall. Our kids are making beautiful art pieces, and I would love to hang them in my office room. Unfortunately, this room is under the roof, so the walls are sloped and it's difficult to hang pictures. We designed the hangers in FreeCAD and cut them on the laser cutter, but at the same time we will show an alternative method to make them with hand tools. We first have to create a box that fits into the back side of the frame and a second part that will be mounted to the wall and then slips into that box. While my son created this piece with his 3D pen, my daughter painted a picture. Looking at the back side of the two frames, we can see that the depth of the back side is different. This calls for a parametric design so that we can develop our cut model only once and can output the shapes with different measures. A spreadsheet is the easiest way to create parameters in FreeCAD. We name our dimensions in the first row and add their values in row B. The parameters we need are the depth, width and height of the available space at the backside of the frame. If you want to create the hanger with hand tools and don't want to mess around with CAD, you can download a spreadsheet from our website that does basically the same calculation. In FreeCAD, we use a macro to automatically copy the values of the spreadsheet in variables that we can use later in the design. The written article describes how to install that macro. In the part workbench in FreeCAD, we add a simple cube. This cube is the shorter side of our box. As everything will be built from 3mm MDF, one dimension is the material thickness, which we add to the spreadsheet. The height of the box is a third of the frame's inner height, and the last dimension corresponds to the depth of the frame minus 2 times the material thickness. We add the long side with the same height and material thickness and the width that is 80% of the frame's inner width. With the clone function from the draft workbench, we duplicate the short and the long side and position them to form a box by adding the values in the placement tab. With the laser cut interlocking workbench, we create finger joints at each corner. We add all the parts to a tab connection and then mark the faces of the short pieces to receive 3 tabs of 10mm width each. Creating a finger joint with the scroll saw would be an option, but as the joint will not be visible, there is an easier way to create the structure with hand tools. We cut a scrap piece of wood to a width of around 1 cm and to a thickness equal to the depth of the frame minus 2 times the material thickness of the MDF. The design of the wall-mounted part is very simple. It's one part that has 2/3 of the frame height and a width that is less than the 80% of the box. We subtract 2 times the material thickness for the sides of the box and another 2 times the material thickness for some wiggle room. The second piece has the same width and half the height of the first part. For a better look, we round over the corners using a fillet operation. We add 2 holes for the hanger by creating a cylinder, copying it and subtracting it from the parts with a Boolean operation. Without a laser cutter, just cut the pieces to the size given in a spreadsheet. We are done in FreeCAD and can export the pieces with the LC interlocking workbench. After exporting the first box, we simply change the parameters in the spreadsheet, recalculate all the objects, and we can also export the box for the second picture frame. With K40 Whisperer, we cut the parts on the laser. We exported them in SVG and somehow the export ignored our holes and didn't round it over the corners properly. Next time we will use a DXF export and this time use a drill to bore the holes manually. Even if you manage to export the holes properly, you still have to countersink them to ensure the two parts fit together nicely. Now we can glue all the pieces together. For the handmade version, just glue the thicker parts to the longer ones. We quickly noticed that the edges need a chamfer, so that sliding the picture in the holder is a bit easier. Creating this chamfer on the wall-mounted part is quite easy with a few strokes of a block plane. You could also use a file or sandpaper. When creating the chamfer comes as an afterthought, as in our case, a file might be the only way to get the chamfer in the inner side of the box. We mount one part to the wall. If your wall isn't covered with wooden panels, you will have to use drywall anchors or another type of fastener. The box part is hot glued to the back side of the picture frame. Now we slip the picture frame over the mount and enjoy the images. This was a super fun project. If you want to keep up with new projects, please subscribe and follow us on Instagram for a look at future projects.